Zelensky could visit US this week to finalize peace deal, official says. And you know what? I find this sort of language to be very misleading. And like, okay, Zelensky could go and finalize peace, but he actually cannot, because Russia also has to agree to it. Like, what does that even mean, finalize peace deal? It's not a peace deal between Ukraine and the US. It's a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. So both Russia and Ukraine have to agree to this peace deal. I believe that Zelensky said that he is, on principle, open to agreeing to the framework of this peace deal, but finalizing it? I just don't see it. I just don't see how that is how that's supposed to work. Is he gonna go and sign it, and then with the signed thing there, Trump's gonna go to Russia? Russia is still saying that it has not received any official version of the redrafted plan. So this whole process is already very messy, and I gotta admit, I'm not confident as to what will come of it. I am not very confident that I'm gonna be in Ukraine on Friday, and that same Friday I'm gonna hear, oh yeah, the ceasefire has been achieved. Ceasefire has been achieved, and it's time for a little celebration in Kyiv. I'm gonna drink till we pass out.
According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, after the negotiations in Geneva, Washington's list of steps to end the war has become, quote, workable. Speaking Monday evening, Zelensky added that following the talks, the agreement has been significantly changed. However,
Yeah, and that already poses a problem. Because if the agreement has been significantly changed, and Russia signals that it has not been actually been given any of the changed plans, then that just means that this is leading to nowhere, because Russia will just reject it. You know?
There is still a lot of work ahead to finalize the document.
Today, our delegation returned from Geneva after negotiations with the American side and European partners. And now the list of necessary steps to end the war can become workable. As of now, after Geneva, there are fewer points, no longer 28 points, and a lot of the right things have been taken into
account. How many points is it now?
As of now, after Geneva, there are fewer points, no longer 28 points, and a lot of the right things have been taken into account in this framework. There is still much to work on together. It is very difficult to make a final document, and we must do everything with dignity. And we appreciate that most of the world is ready to help us, and the American side is constructive. In fact, all day yesterday there were meetings. It was difficult.
Yeah, this does not fill me with confidence. This is just political speech. This statement does not fill me with confidence. I would like to be hopeful, but it's difficult. It is difficult to be hopeful that this will lead to anything. This has actually led to many very negative things, like Zelensky's right-hand man, Yermak, his ass being basically saved by this whole event. And it's just very, very disturbing. I have a ton of statements. I have a ton of commentary from different people on these things. And let me see. I'm gonna walk through them. We're gonna hear from Lavrov. Let's see. We're gonna start with Zelensky. I have a lot. There's a lot of statements that were made. Anton. Vladimir Zelensky. There we go. We're gonna start off with this. We're gonna be going through various statements regarding this peace proposal, this negotiation, and I feel like we're gonna get somewhat of a picture. I have actually prepared a bunch of stuff for this stream. For this here stream, we are prepared. We worked with the Ukrainian negotiating team today on the text of the document prepared with the United States and Geneva. The principles in this document can be developed into deeper agreements. It is in our shared interest that security is real. I count on continued active cooperation with the American side and President Trump. Much depends on the United States, blah, blah, blah. Let's just listen to what he has to say.
Бажаю здоров'я. Важкий, довгий сьогоднішній день. Від ночі доповіді військових
Since the night I received reports from the military,
МВС, доповідь з
the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and from the regions
регіонів по нашій протидії
on
російському
our countermeasures against the Russian strike
удару та по нашому
and our recovery efforts.
відновленню. Масований був
It was a massive attack, and it's particularly cynical
удар, особливо цинічно, що Росія завдає таких
that Russia carries out such attacks while discussions
ударів, коли тривають розмови щодо того,
on how to end the war are ongoing. Listen, it actually makes perfect sense considering that one of the points that Russia wants is a complete amnesty for any war crimes. So it actually makes it makes a lot of sense to Russia to be able to squeeze in as many new war crimes as possible before a full amnesty, no?
як закінчити війну. Америка дуже
America is very active. Europe is too. And so are our other partners.
активна, і Європа дуже активна, також інші наші партнери. У всіх один
Everyone shares the same agenda.
порядок денний, і тільки
Sadly, I cannot agree that everybody shares the same agenda. I don't think that the United States under Trump shares the same agenda as Europe, or especially as Ukraine. I just don't believe that.
у Москви
Yet only Moscow invariably keeps the war against Ukraine
незмінно війна проти України залишається
as their top priority. I mean, yeah, they feel like they can. I feel like Ukraine has crappy allies, like things are going their way. They have better allies, so they could just keep going. Did you ask any Ukrainian people about what they think about the corruption scandal? I'll be able to talk about that when I'm in Ukraine proper, which will be on Friday. I'll be leaving Poland on Thursday, and I'll be arriving in Kyiv on Friday.
першим пріоритетом для них. Удари,
Strikes like the one today confirm
як
this.
сьогодні, це підтверджують. І тому
Therefore, for all of us, it is extremely important
для нас усіх надзвичайно важливо не
not to forget the real situation, not to forget
забувати реальну ситуацію, не забувати, що
what
відбувається
is happening here and now, and to counter Russian strikes.
тут і зараз, і протидіяти російським ударам. І, звісно,
Of course, counter them 24/7.
протидіяти 24/7. 24/7
Ukrainian representatives are working with the United States 24/7.
українські представники працюють з Америкою і з
By
тими,
the way, this whole thing has done a bit of harm to the whole anti-corruption effort. It has done harm in ousting Yermak, the right hand of Zelensky, that everybody frankly hates. And there has been a little bit of controversy regarding the initial peace plan. Because again, one of the points of the peace plan is a complete amnesty for all war crimes during this conflict. And apparently, I don't remember the person's name, but one of the Ukrainian politicians have figured, hey, if there is a total, if there's total amnesty for all crimes, we could work into that little point about amnesty, an amnesty for all people that are being accused of corruption. Easy peasy, nice solution. It is apparently not. It apparently not went well with the Ukrainian population, so the idea was scrapped. But I will note that an attempt has been made by certain people I assume implicated in scandals, to include them getting an amnesty under the amnesty from war crimes bit.
Хто може допомогти,
As all of
щоб
those who can help ensure truly real,
були дійсно реальні, ефективні
effective steps towards ending this war.
кроки для закінчення цієї війни. Так само 24
Likewise, we are doing everything 24/7 to ensure our army
робимо все, щоб у нашої армії, щоб у наших
and our
людей
people have the means to defend themselves.
були можливості захисту. Сьогодні відбулася
Today, a meeting of the coalition of the willing took place. Yes. And interestingly enough, I think a representative from the United States took. We'll talk about it. The coalition of the meeting apparently had a representative from the United States during it.
зустріч коаліції охочих. Дуже
We have
предметна
a very substantive discussion.
розмова.
Although it's all substantive discussions, I have heard a million times over about substantive discussions, brilliant talks, progress. I have heard it for years now. So what I'm going to believe is results. I'm not going to believe that things are good because a nice conversation took place, because a nice meeting took place, because everybody felt good after talking what can be done to reach peace. I'm going to believe it when both Russia and Ukraine agree to a framework and when that results in an actual ceasefire. That won't be broken seconds after being agreed to, because that has already actually happened this year, I want to say.
Я хочу подякувати передусім
I want to primarily thank Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer,
Еммануелю Макрону, Кіру Стармеру, Фрідріху
and Friedrich Merz for co-organizing it.
Мерцу за співорганізацію і від Америки
And the US side was represented by Marco Rubio. There we go. The US side was represented by Marco Rubio.
був Марко Рубіо. Було майже 40
There were nearly 40 participants. Europe, the United States,
учасників. Європа, Сполучені Штати, була Канада,
Canada was present, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand.
Японія, Австралія, Нова Зеландія. Надзвичайно
An extremely important message
важливий меседж, який об'єднує всіх
that unites us all is that we must coordinate our diplomacy.
нас. Маємо дуже предметно координувати нашу дипломатію, враховувати
In a very substantive way, taking into account the interests
інтереси партнерів. І якщо їх
of our partners whenever a particular step affects them. It's again, the more the plan ends up being different from the initial plan, the more the probability that Russia will just reject it. And Russia rejecting it will not end up in Russia being penalized by the United States, mind you. It will just end up in dragging the conversations further and further down the road, which will just give Russia space to bomb Ukrainian cities and kill Ukrainian civilians. That is what I predict will happen. Russia will see the new framework, will see the new modified points to the plan, and will just say that it is not acceptable for Russia. Russia will say that this plan is bad because it does not address the core reasons for the conflict. It's just
стосується той чи інший крок. І пам'ятаємо зараз, не можна релаксувати, розслабляти.
now is not the time to relax. Let our guard down. Must not lose our unity. We simply cannot. The unity is very questionable, let me just say. There is a question of, is there really unity at this point? But that's neither here nor there. All that can be done is to move forward.
Не можна втрачати єдність, не можна. Зараз треба
We must now defend against Russian strikes,
захищатись від російських ударів, від
against Russian assaults.
російських штурмів. Треба
We must ensure Ukraine's resilience.
гарантувати Україні стійкість. Це
These are absolutely concrete tasks.
конкретні абсолютно завдання. Протиповітря
Air defense is necessary, which Ukraine is not able to obtain because not very good allies. And that is why more and more residential buildings are being destroyed everywhere. Eastern Ukraine, Western Ukraine, you name it, it gets attacked.
Оборона потрібна. Оборонні
Defense packages are necessary for us, which the United States is not willing to provide.
пакети нам потрібні. Я хочу
I want to thank each partner for joining the PURL initiative,
подякувати кожному партнеру за участь в програмі Pearl, яка дозволяє
which enables us to procure American weapons,
нам купувати американську зброю, в тому числі
including missiles for the Patriot systems.
це ракети для систем Patriot. Минулої ночі
Last night, our air defense performed quite well,
наша протиракетна оборона спрацювала
and
непогано.
yet people died.
Збиті крилаті
Intercepting cruise missiles as well as ballistic missiles
ракети, і також балістичні ракети, аеробалістичні.
and non-aero
Більш ніж
ballistic. Over 400 attack drones were also shot down.
400 ударних дронів також збито. Щоб ми
To be capable of doing this, we need the appropriate
могли
resources.
це робити, потрібен відповідний ресурс. І разом з нашими
And together with our partners, we are ensuring that our state, the peace, but I'm willing to bet, that some actors, especially the United States, will move towards saying, wait a minute, we're discussing peace now. We're talking about agreeing to a peace framework. Why would you ask for more weapons? Why would you ask for more weapons then? In fact, Trump has said something to that effect. Zelensky always tries to buy more missiles. He just wants more missiles. Why didn't he think of that when he started the war? Don't start a war with a bigger country when you don't know that you'll win. So yeah, I think that the United States under Trump will just double, triple, quadruple, really magnify this message of Zelensky keeps wanting weapons, but we're supposed to be discussing peace now.
партнерами ми забезпечуємо таку можливість для нашої держави. для
Ukraine
України.
has such capabilities.
Сьогодні ж є
Also today, Ukraine adopted a new sanctions
нове
decision.
санкційне рішення України. Це
It's an important decision. We impose sanctions
важливе рішення. Ми застосували санкції до морських
on ships taking Ukrainian grain from the occupied territories.
суден, які вивозили з окупованої території українське зерно. 56
56 such vessels.
таких суден. Це новий напрямок
This is a new direction for our sanctions.
наших санкцій. І частину
And some of these ships have already been
з
sanctioned,
цих суден вже санкціонували партнери, але
but by our partners, but not all.
не всі. І будемо
And
збільшувати
we will continue to increase this pressure.
такий тиск. Кожен
Every Russian crime must receive an appropriate response,
російський злочин повинен отримати
which, according to the plan, apparently will be total amnesty.
відповідну реакцію. І санкції
And sanctions are the most immediate reaction.
– це найбільш оперативна реакція. Говорив
During the day, I spoke separately
за цей день окремо. Я
with the Prime Minister of the United
з
Kingdom,
прем'єр-міністром Британії, з канцлером
the Chancellor of Germany, and the President of Finland,
Німеччини,
which the President of Finland has been saying some interesting things in his own right. We could be doing a whole thing about that separately.
з президентом Фінляндії. Сьогодні
We also worked with the Ukrainian negotiating team today
також працювали з українською переговорною командою щодо
on the next of the document prepared with the United States and Geneva.
тексту в документі, який напрацьований зі Сполученими Штатами Америки в Женеві. Принципи
The principles in this document
цього документу можуть бути
can be developed into deeper agreements.
розвинуті в більш
Developed into deeper agreements. So it's still, I would say, there's just still a long, long way ahead till this actually turns into something specific, turns into something substantial.
глибокі домовленості. І це наш спільний
And it is in our shared interest that security is real.
щоб безпека була реальною. Розраховую на
I count on continued active
подальшу
cooperation
активну співпрацю з
with
американською
the American side and President Trump, because glazing Trump is just mandatory in these conversations.
стороною та з президентом Трампом. Багато
Much depends on the United States,
залежить від Америки, бо саме
Because it's America's strength that Russia takes most seriously, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Europe is weak and toothless and cannot seem to do anything without the United States, which is a mistake. Because that means that the United States can pressure Ukraine into taking a deal that is very bad for it.
На американську силу в Росії зважають найбільше. Я дякую
I thank everyone who stands with
всім,
Ukraine.
хто з Україною. Я дякую
I
всім,
thank everyone who is helping.
хто допомагає. І важливо зараз
And it's important right now. Wow. Ukraine thanking, Zelensky thanking. What a shock.
тримати внутрішню
To
силу
maintain our inner strength in the same matter we
так,
all
як ми всі хочемо,
want
щоб
our strength in diplomacy to be effective.
наша сила в дипломатії спрацювала. Слава Україні!
Okay, that's it. So that's Zelensky's reaction. You can also check out the Oh, I got so many things here. You would not believe. This is the Trump statement. We'll be reading it later. You know what? Let's look at Witkoff. Okay? This is not the thing that I want to see. Let's jump perspective and look at Witkoff. Okay? The only thing that is probably fair, I think we're gonna see in the video. So let's go to some Russian perspective, okay? The only thing that is probably fair to say is that all their smiles and hugs towards Russian representatives,
которые по отношению к российским представителям присутствовали до
before the Ukrainian crisis, were just an act. They pretended to be benevolent, but in reality,
украинского кризиса, что все это была игра, что они напускали на себя вот эту доброжелательность, а на самом деле всегда хотели.
They always wanted harm and misfortune for Russia. Yeah, imagine Russia invading a country and trying to genocide its people and then crying victim. Oh no, all these people that support Ukraine, they just want to harm us. They're so bad.
России вреда и беды. И то, что
The fact that they are now predicting the collapse of our economy,
сейчас они предрекают крах нашей экономики, что наш народ
that our people will rise with pitchforks and overthrow everyone.
поднимется с
Nobody's saying that, by the way.
вилами и всех свергнет. Это лишний раз
Shows once again that Europe is living up to the reputation it has earned over the past 500 years.
показывает, что все-таки Европа она в очередной раз доказывает свою репутацию, репутацию, завоеванную в течение 500, наверное, лет, когда
When all major misfortunes originated from this group of states, some smaller, some larger. I'm sorry, but the only source of misery right now is Russia for this region of the world. You cannot blame it on anyone else.
все крупные беды проистекают именно
Russia, unironically, Russia is trying to make itself out to be the victim.
этой вот группки государств. Кто-то поменьше, кто-то побольше, но две мировые войны
Two world wars began in Europe because of the ambitions of various European leaders.
начались.
Yeah, World War I did not start with because of any ambitions of world leaders, actually. Interestingly enough, World War I had nobody had anything actually to gain from World War I. That is an important fact to remember about how it started, the tragedy of it. There was a lot of big empires that were intertwined in treaties, mutual treaties, that made it impossible to not react and not to support the other in the war when the war was triggered. But there was nothing to be gained for any of the parties involved in the conflict when it started. And everybody lost in World War I at the end. I think the only party that has not ended up miserable and defeated and worse off is the United States. But the United States is not part of Europe, so...
В Европе из-за амбиций, которые испытывали различные европейские лидеры. И, к сожалению...
Unfortunately, this historical code has not disappeared. Aggressiveness with a Russophobic accent continues to exist in Europe. Yeah. How dare you be Russophobic and not just allow Russia to invade and annex any country at once? How dare you? Such an evil, aggressive Europe attitude.
Вот этот исторический код, наверное, не знаю, он никуда не исчезает, и агрессивность с
Such aggressiveness.
русофобским акцентом, она продолжает в Европе существовать.
But he also talks about the peace treaty itself, if memory serves.
Единственное, что
Sorry. But that's one thing, right? And then there's more. There's more. There's a lot of Witkoff, actually. I want a very specific response. I have it somewhere around here. I have it prepared. It's just that there's so many responses from everybody that it becomes a mess. It becomes a giant mess, okay? There you go. This is it. This is the Lavrov statement about the peace negotiations that has been happening.
Наступила длительная пауза. И вот сейчас пауза.
Let me see if there's any subtitles to this.
Наступила длительная пауза.
I don't see any. Lavrov, Russia has received Trump's plan through unofficial channels and is ready to discuss specific wording. Europe wants to undermine efforts to resolve the conflict. Russia expects the West to pass a plan agreed with Europe and Ukraine. The EU has a colonial mentality. I have no clue what that means. That Europe, I don't know if he is implying that Europe wants to colonize Russia, that it has a mentality of colony. What is Lavrov exactly saying here? I'm not exactly sure, but I know that he is basically saying that Europe is greedy and bad for wanting to change the beautiful peace plan that has been penned by the glorious Russian Federation. So far, we have not received from our American colleagues the version that the media is speculating about, although the counter-proposal that Zelensky has said that is ready to work on and maybe possibly even agree to. Russia is saying here that they have not received this plan. The West wants to rework Trump's plan in order to undermine the settlement efforts. And by Trump's plan, he means the Russian plan that has been given to Trump. Russia expects the US to provide the version of the plan that they consider to be an interim one in the phase of coordination with Europe and Ukraine. The West has repeatedly undermined the progress achieved on Ukraine. Europe has failed on all accounts in its actions on Ukraine since 2014. Not even 2022. Europe has failed since 2014 with its weak non-response to Russia's annexation of Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk. Lavrov on the EU's active desire to participate in a peaceful settlement. You had opportunities, but you failed to take advantage of them.
России
The EU has a colonial mentality. The white is black Orwell. Russia has permanent channels of communication with Washington. Russia is engaged in diplomacy on Ukraine. No idle talk. And that is basically it. That is Mr. Lavrov's response, Mr. Lavrov's reaction. And this does not fill me with optimism, because this just increasingly makes me think that if the plan that is now being worked on deviates too much from the initial plan, then Russia will just outright reject it. And I just don't believe that the Trump administration has the courage to do anything to put on any pressure on Russia should Russia just reject this peace plan. I just don't have that confidence at all. There's no confidence at all. Okay, let's continue. Yeah. So that we've heard from Zelensky, we've heard from Lavrov, and now we can continue with more reactions to this plan. Donald J. Trump's. We might as well read Donald J. Trump's statement on the upcoming peace plan. That seems like an idea. Over the past week, my team has made tremendous progress with respect to ending the war between Russia and Ukraine, something that I have been hearing since the very start of Trump's second term. I've been regularly hearing that tremendous progress has been made, that some wonderful conversations have been had, that everything is going to plan. In fact, I just in the video that we've been watching, Witkov said that 8 months ago, Witkov said that anytime now we will have a partial ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire, and that it will be followed up by a permanent ceasefire. And of course, that has not happened. So when Trump says we've made tremendous progress, I don't believe it. I will believe it once I see it. But until that happens, I'll just, I guess, wait for something to actually materialize, something specific, something real, not just talk, not just empty words. A war that would have never started if I were president. Last month, 25,000 soldiers died. The original 28-point peace plan, which was drafted by the United States, that's apparently a lie. We don't actually know who drafted the plan. We don't have any official confirmation if it was the United States or if it was Russia or a mix of both. We don't really know, because some say it was Russia, some say it was the United States. We just cannot know. Has been fine-tuned with additional input from both sides. This is an interesting statement, that has been fine-tuned with an input from both sides, since Mr. Lavrov has clearly said that Russia has not received the new plan. Russia has not received the revised plan. So what additional input from both sides? And there are only a few remaining points of disagreement, which just, quote unquote, a few disagreements could mean a lot of things. It could mean the territorial concessions, the gutting of the military. It could mean the total amnesty of war criminals. It could mean the Russia wanting to have a say in Ukraine's education, religious system. It could mean many different things. In the hopes of finalizing this peace deal, I have directed my special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to meet with President Putin in Moscow, and at the same time, Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll will be meeting with the Ukrainians. I will be briefed on all progress made along with Vice President J.D. Vance. Also, I'm very nervous about Witkoff once again going to Russia. I am very, very worried about him screwing things up, about him making things much worse than they are even now. I do not trust Witkoff with being a competent negotiator at all. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final, or in its final stages, which, again, I'm skeptical about. I am not very hopeful that this will happen. I would like to believe that a compromise can be reached soon, but I just don't believe that it will. I just don't think that it will. I think that Russia will definitely reject any version that will not meet all of its wish list demands. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter, and let's hope that peace can be accomplished as soon as possible. We'll see. I have my doubts. Merging. Zelensky could visit US this week to finalize peace deal. We'll see. Again, we'll just have to see. Let's now Trump direct special envoy. This is the thing that I wanted to continue this with. Amidst a flurry of diplomatic activity and vast evolving developments, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned earlier on Tuesday that Moscow would not accept an amended peace proposal that undermines key understandings reached in an Alaska summit between Trump and Putin in August. So already preemptively, Russia has all but announced, if this goes too far from what we want, we'll just reject it, which was not very difficult to predict would happen, right? Earlier, Ukraine's National Security Chief Rustem Umerov said Kyiv and Washington had reached a common understanding. It's just... okay, maybe, but that doesn't guarantee that it will move to an actual result. It is just not guarantee that it will end in anything substantial. A Ukrainian delegation held talks with US and European teams in Geneva on Sunday in an effort to refine a 28-point draft that had been presented by Washington last week, by which Kyiv and its allies viewed as too favorable to Moscow. And Russia thinks that Russia feels that it's winning right now. Russia feels that it has the upper hand because the allies of Ukraine have not been creating conditions in which Russia is forced to accept certain things. And those things have to be created on the ground. Those things have to be created via aid. And that aid is not substantial. So we are at a situation in which Russia actually has a lot more leverage. Russia is in the position to reject a peace plan if it doesn't like it. Following the talks, Kyiv and Washington agreed to reduce the draft to 19 points, which I already can tell you that Russia will most likely not agree to. Although its full content has not been made public, Zelensky said on Monday that the revised draft was more aligned with Ukraine's position, which means that there is a higher possibility that Russia will reject it. Trump, who entered the White House in January, vowing to end the conflict on his first day in office, has renewed his diplomatic push to bring an end to the war, Europe's bloodiest since World War II. And of course, he also wants a huge destruction from the Epstein files. I'm not gonna pretend that that's not it. Okay. So there you go. Stub. Peace mediation always needs patience. So we're gonna take a look at this real quick. What a beautiful new viewer we have on YouTube. Always appreciate them. Well, yes, we have here the Finnish perspective.
Needs patience, and of course, always
We have the Finnish perspective. So let's hear it.
Needs patience, and of course, when you have a 28-point plan which is put out as a first draft, there's going to be work to be done. I think the plan has 3 levels. Level one, number 1 is Ukraine. What happens to Ukraine? Land swaps, etc. Then level number 2 is Europe and European security, EU and NATO. And then level number 3 is the transatlantic partnership. So with these things, it takes time. That's why we have our national security advisors in Geneva.
It takes time is a key thing here. That means that Trump will not get what he wants anytime soon. Trump was really pushing to get this whole thing done by Thanksgiving, possibly Christmas, because he wants a big win. He wants a big distraction again from the files. But things don't work like that. It started off as a thing that was not acceptable to Ukraine, and now it's just turning into a thing that is not acceptable to Russia. And if anybody's serious about the whole process, then they will have to find a way to make it into a thing that both parties will be able to accept, which with Russia that thinks that it can just straight up win, it becomes quite a difficult task.
Today, speaking with Foreign Secretary Rubio, with Andrei Yermak and others. So, one day at a time.
It is very interesting that Andrei Yermak is the person to just talk with foreign leaders, considering that, again, he's not exactly an elected guy. He's just handpicked organizer. It's very interesting. Yermak is a very, very fascinating figure, and a lot of Ukrainians want him out because he's one of the main actors in some of the biggest controversies and some of the biggest corruption scandals in the country.
Always need countries from the coalition of the willing. We We work on this as a team, so that's why we had 11 countries from the Coalition of the Willing meeting here in Johannesburg yesterday, including Canada and Japan, who are strongly committed in finding
Marco Rubio was there as well.
a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And we work on the text together, we negotiate together, and I don't want to lift up any specifics at this stage.
There is a problem that has been present from the get-go, that the starting point for negotiation, that the starting point for making changes was the Russian perspective. That instead of coming up with its own perspective, with its own plan, with its own push for peace, instead, the West, Europe, the United States have taken an entirely Russian perspective on peace and decided to just modify that instead of creating its own counter proposal that is not based on the Russian one. It's just very bad way to get things rolling from the get-go, in my opinion.
I guess yes and no is the right answer. Yes.
Do you believe this was Europe being sidelined? Do you believe that Europe is being sidelined in this whole process? Yeah, I know about the bot attacks. Yeah, I know, Vladimir.
I guess yes and no is the right answer. Yes, in the sense that we hadn't seen the document beforehand, but no, in the sense that now we're negotiating and discussing with our American friends. And now
That doesn't mean anything. Just discussing and negotiating itself does not mean anything. Does not mean that there's no sidelining. Yeah, there was a person that came into the YouTube chat and started throwing a lot of slurs around.
So I'm not too concerned. I think quite often in these types of negotiations, you need patience. You need to be cool. You need to tone down the emotions. And I guess to a certain extent, be a little bit more Finnish, and then you find a solution. You'll find the finishing line.
But you
Funny. Very, very funny. You seem certain that this will not be the final agreement. Why? I am certain about it as well. I think that the transformed one Russia will reject and that it will have to be transformed further. Definitely.
It's a little, we're here in the G20, right? And here a document was approved. The establishment, that document took months. So it's never the first draft that goes through. You have to do many different iterations. I think it doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer or whether you're in the news business. When you deal with contracts, it takes time. It's a little, we're here
with contracts. Have you spoken with President Trump this weekend? What was the progress of these discussions?
10 minutes ago, Prime Minister Meloni and myself spoke with President Trump.
and what was the progress of those discussions? It's quite early in the US.
The President of the United States wakes up very early and he works very hard.
Good joke.
And he wanted to talk
Nice one.
about the plan and the state
He works very hard on the golf courses usually.
of the play. 10 minutes.
Brilliant. It's unlikely that on Thursday we will see a final agreement.
It's difficult. You know, I don't want to sort of preempt that.
Uh-oh.
You never know with these kinds of negotiations. But I think the key
I'm pretty sure that Russia will not agree to something that will go too far from what they've actually initially proposed.
right now would be to get a ceasefire.
I don't think we'll get a ceasefire.
And we'll see how things go.
Exactly. That is a true statement if I've ever heard one. We will see how things go. Is President Trump ready to listen to amendments to this plan from European partners? The question isn't actually if Trump is willing to listen to those amendments. The question is, to what degree is Russia willing to listen to those amendments?
I think President Trump is the person who decides on what the parameters of the document will be at the end of the day. Nothing will pass without the green light coming from President Trump.
And that is a very depressing thought. That is exactly why Europe has to strengthen itself and lessen its dependence on America, because this is the result. Yeah, it'll be like Trump wants it at the end of the day. That should not be a sentence uttered by anybody, actually. And again, it's not just about what Trump wants. It's also about what Russia is willing to agree to. Is this plan a significant step forward? But I find these interviews to be interesting. Yeah, Europe is actually being very pathetic, and I'm afraid that because of that, we might all end up being fucked in the ass, to put it bluntly.
After Alaska, there was no document. And after Alaska, we, the European leaders, convened with President Zelensky.
Yeah, and now Russia has apparently produced a document, which, great, but...
in the White House after the weekend in Alaska, and decided to start working on security guarantees. That was an advance. Then, after the phone conversation President Trump had with President Putin, I think 3 weeks ago, and then he met President Zelensky the next day, what we felt came out of that was ceasefire at the line of contact.
Yeah, a ceasefire did not come out of it. Trump's wish for a ceasefire came out of it, which, interestingly enough, Trump in Alaska said that he doesn't need a ceasefire. A ceasefire does not need to happen, and now suddenly it does need to happen. Like, there's no consistent policy to Trump. And also, in light of all this, of this horrible Russian plan that is being tweaked, what exactly was the plan of Ukraine signing this shitty mineral deal with the US? What was the point of that? Wasn't the US supposed to continue aid for Ukraine, in exchange for signing that whole rare earth mineral deal? That basically just became worthless. That became a worthless piece of document for Ukraine. Like, it seems like signing that with the US was a huge mistake, because Ukraine has not earned anything from it. Because now that this thing is on the table, everybody's just pretending that no rare earth mineral was made deal, and that no promises of aid were made in exchange for signing it.
So we worked on that. And now for the first time we have a document. I mean, of course, in diplomacy, we all put down different plans and ideas about what could be done.
I love how everybody just treats it as fun and games while people are dying and Russia's conducting its little plan of conquest.
But this is the first time we see a comprehensive document on the table.
Yeah, penned by Russia, which has to be reminded every step of the way. Yeah, Ronald Reagan, yeah. We're not living in good times. How credible is the US threat to halt intelligence and weapon supplies to Ukraine if it refuses the peace deal? That is actually a good question. I would also like to know what exactly will be the consequences towards Russia if it rejects the plan.
You have to understand that President Zelensky is under tremendous pressure right now. I as a Finn understand that. We have a 1,340 kilometer border with Russia, and you only need to read something on the...
Yeah, I agree, Konrad. There will be none. As always.
The Winter War and the War of Continuation to understand the pressure under which our leadership at the time was. So, we just have to take it day by day and we look at some ultimatums, but of course, Ukraine right now has the most modern army in the world. It's been able to deny the strategic aim of Putin for almost 4 years. When the war began, it was a traditional, conventional war in trenches. It was with tanks. Suddenly we moved to drones. Intelligence
We did not move to drones suddenly, but
is obviously a big part of it, but Ukraine already has, with satellites, quite good intelligence. So we're all working.
is he trying to downplay if the United States completely withdrew from helping Ukraine?
With the Ukrainians, including the Americans. But it is clear that without American support, the situation would be much more difficult. That is why Europeans, for instance, right now are buying American weapons, because they are so sophisticated and that they are useful on the battlefield in Ukraine.
So that was a non-answer. That was a complete non-answer. He did not, true politician, he did not answer the question at all about how credible the US threat is. He did not even address that question in the slightest. If the US walks away from the conflict in the future, will Europe and Ukraine be able to defend Ukraine? Another good question.
I think it's in the strategic interests of the United States to
No, I don't think so. I don't think Trump thinks that. And right now, what Trump thinks goes. I don't think Trump thinks that it is in the strategic interest of. I think that he's just fueling his ego with this whole thing. I don't think Trump thinks in terms of strategic interest, to be quite honest.
continue to support Ukraine, because Ukraine is fighting for the values that we in Europe and the United States stand for.
Yeah, Trump does not care about that stuff. Trump just does not care about values and all that other lofty crap. He just doesn't.
Because Ukraine is
If he did, then he would have continued actual aid and not withheld it, not started selling weapons to Europe to give to Ukraine and trying to push the worst possible deal.
showing that in the face of an aggressor, they can actually defend themselves. So it is in the vested interests of Europe and the United States that Ukraine does not lose this war.
Great answer. Very standard, very cookie cutter answer. What are your expectations for the talks in Switzerland?
I hope that we advance. I hope we understand each other better. I hope we find some landing zones among the Americans, the Europeans, and the Ukrainians. So I'm carefully optimistic but realistic. So let's see what happens. I hope that
I'm negative. I'm completely negative about it. I have no hope that it will go well. I'm going to be honest. I am very, very negative about the whole process. And let's just say that I'm just being very Polish about the whole thing. I'm just very Polish about the whole thing. And I think I'm justified. I think I'm very justified in being very negative about the whole thing. Okay, let's watch some more stuff related to this because I've got more. The West must understand that the power structure was created is unfair, which is interesting. This is coming from Alexander Stubb, the same president that was just talking now. Oh, okay. Caroline Lewitt on Ukraine. The United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever. We cannot sell weapons to Ukraine forever. What a pathetic statement. What a silly statement.
People. You know, President Trump stopped the funding of this war, but the United States is still sending or selling a big amount of weapons to NATO. We cannot do that forever.
Yeah, we cannot just keep profiting forever. That would be bad for the United States. It's not like it's the whole point of the military industry to just keep selling the stuff forever and keep making profit. No, not at all.
And the president
We just cannot keep doing this forever.
wants this war to end. He is a peacetime president. That's what he's pursuing. And today, he remains optimistic and hopeful. And I know
He is not. He has botched so many deals. He has botched so many. He has not been able to solve any of the conflicts that he has said he did.
our teams are working around the clock to try to get this deal to an end.
I feel like Putin has at least some time to stall. I feel like Putin has at least one more year in him. That's my honest assessment. I feel like Putin feels like he can drag this out for at least another year. Oh, there you go. Breaking. According to Politico, Marco Rubio refused to meet with the EU diplomat Kaja Kallas as discussions about Trump's peace initiative continue. The publication notes that Kallas has largely withdrawn from public diplomacy due to her difficult relationship with Trump's team. Even Rubio, regarded as the administration's most pro-European high-ranking figure, is declining to engage in bilateral talks with her. Politico adds that Kallas is acting as the bad cop, organizing and guiding EU member states behind the scenes. Let's see.
Not with violence or destruction, but with our voices and our votes. Fight not against each other, but for the hopes and dreams we share in common and make us one. And fight for an America where we are safe from those who seek to harm us on our streets and from abroad.
I know how to hold, just out the fence, I'm having them honchos running around in the lobby. I know.
So yeah, it is what it is. We have seen this. It is practically impossible to discuss the security system in Europe, and speaking about security guarantees and the security system is probably difficult in general, without the participation of Europeans at some stage. Of course, this will be necessary, says Peskov, another representative of Russia. We remain completely open to a negotiation process. We are interested in achieving our goals through political and diplomatic means. Stress being put on the words, we are interested in achieving our goals, which just, the more I hear Russian representatives talk on the subject, the more I think that they will just reject the deal. Maybe you're right, Konrad. Naturally, it is practically impossible to discuss the security system in Europe. And speaking about security guarantees, and the security system is probably difficult in general. Without the participation of Europeans at some stage, of course, this will be necessary. But right now, the only substantive thing is the American project, Trump's project. There you go. It's all about Trump, Trump's ego. It's all about him. But the reason why he is saying this is because Trump's plan, Trump's project was given to him by Russia. That is an important thing to remember, which why Peskov, the representative of Russia, is so optimistic and so excited about it. That is why you have been even remotely wondering. It is because it is a Russian plan, basically. That is why.
Есть субстантивно, это американский проект Трампа. Мы считаем, что это...
We believe that this could be a very good basis for negotiations, and our president has also spoken about this. Yeah, of course you think that this is a great basis for negotiations. Of course you should think that the starting point should be the Russian perspective, the Russian demands, and mainly giving Russia what it wishes. A Russian wish list should be a starting point for negotiation, is what you're saying.
Это может стать очень хорошей основой для переговоров, и об этом тоже говорил наш президент. Мы по-прежнему
We still hold this view. The time will come and we will look into this matter in detail.
придерживаемся этой точки зрения, но
It is depressing, yeah.
настанет черед, и мы этим предметно займемся.
This plan has not been prepared or discussed in detail. Indeed, it is a draft from the US that was sent to us, which apparently is complete bullshit. Apparently, it has been the other way around. It was penned by Russia and sent to the United States. It's why the initial plan had so many bits that were weirdly worded, but made perfect sense when you read it in the Russian language.
Этот план не готовился.
So I do not believe him for a second when he says that it was penned by the US and sent to Russia.
Это действительно это наброс от американской стороны, наброс, который был нам передан. Но он...
But it was being put together based in part on the understandings that we were reaching entourage.
Он верстался в том числе, основываясь на тех пониманиях, которые были достигнуты в Анкоридже. И он, собственно,
And in fact, it is largely in line with the spirit of entourage.
во многом он действительно соответствует духу Анкориджа.
Which was the plan that they were willing to agree to. There you go. We're getting so many perspectives. Ruth, I know one thing about Russians and Putin. Whenever you make an agreement, you have to make it sure it is in his interest to keep to it. So whenever a peace deal is reached on Ukraine, he will never try again.
Trying to understand the guy. But I know one thing about the Russians in general, and Putin in specific. Whenever you make an agreement, you have to make sure it is in his interest to keep to it. So that's why it is so important that whenever a peace deal is reached on Ukraine, that he will never try again. And he will never try again when he knows that the consequences for him will be devastating if he tries to invade Ukraine again after a long-term ceasefire /
He will sure feel those devastating consequences if there's no pressure on Russia, if it's just allowed to rebuild, if sanctions are gone, Russia will be able to just calmly rebuild and attack again, and possibly this time succeed. There's the reality of it. Yeah, me neither. Now, let's end it off with a little bit of glazing. I feel like I have covered this topic pretty well. I feel like we have gotten a lot of different perspectives and that we have gotten a little bit of a picture as to what's going on with those negotiations. There's a lot that we don't know because, of course, we cannot know. Most of these negotiations are happening behind closed doors, but there's some speculations that we can engage in and try to make some predictions. And based on the words of the people that are reacting to this plan, I fear that Russia, in its current changed form, will simply reject it. But now we will cap it off with a bit of glazing of Trump by peak Hexeth. Okay? Mr. President, sir?
Mr. President, you're exactly right. At the War Department, you don't get peace without strength. And our job is to be the strength part of the equation and deliver that when necessary, as you demonstrated with your order of Midnight Hammer. And the entire world saw. And I just want to echo what Marco said. It is a personal honor to be able to witness the way you lead and negotiate. I wish people had a full understanding of what that looks like. That historic nature. A lot of us vets, the Vice President, Tulsi, Lee, Doug, probably after decades of war and the chaos that was unleashed through reckless and foolish American policies, never thought this kind of peace would be possible. Yet, with your strength, with your ability to wield trade negotiations, personal relationships, to open up that opportunity is truly historic on the world stage.
So we end up this segment with this a little bit of glazing, a little bit of cocksucking, because that is basically how you need to communicate with Trump.